Hello, everyone. Welcome to Application Savvy. My name is Rebecca Wright. I'm the Internship Manager in the Career Development Office. I also have Meg with me here today. Meg?
Hi, I'm Meg Adderman, the Student Outreach Manager at Career Development.
So I have a presentation that I will go through. Meg will monitor the chat if you have questions along the way, but we will answer most questions at the end of the presentation. So just, if you have anything, we will address it if we're not able to address it along the way. So I will get started with sharing my screen. Give me one sec. So this presentation is Application Savvy, and the primary goal of this workshop is to kind of go over how to make a strong internship or job application. So we're covering sort of employer perspective, what employers are looking for when they are asking for applications, how to match your skill set so they recognize that you are a good candidate, and then just the logistics of the application process. So this is mostly just kind of to think about kind of beyond just like sending a resume off to apply, how to be much more kind of clear to the employer that you are qualified and how to tailor things more directly to what you're applying for. So we're starting with the employer perspective. So the first thing that's really important to know is that employers, just like everyone, they're short on time. So when they're looking at the applications they receive, they may spend anywhere from 6 to 30 seconds scanning the application to see if it's relevant. And this might vary. Some places you apply, they might get 5 applications, some might get 500. You never really know kind of what's on the receiving end. Usually for a bigger company, you might assume they get more applications, but you don't always know. So just know that when you're sending off an application, that they're probably looking at things very, very quickly. So you really need to maximize the materials you're sending so that it kind of right away within that first few seconds, the employer says, hey, I need to look at this closer and kind of, put it aside to review more in depth, or maybe even call you for an interview. So that's something to be aware of. What employers are looking at in that couple seconds is they're looking for very specific experience and qualifications to be met. And so that needs to be clear on the resume. And if they don't see that right away, they often will pass. They're not going to spend a long time reading all the text and trying to see if you qualify. For the most part, they're going to be doing a quick glance to just kind of see if you have those basic key things that they're looking for. So the other thing is employers, what they're kind of wondering when they're looking at your application is, why are you applying to that opportunity? What made you stop what you're doing and put a resume, maybe a cover letter and portfolio together and send it to them? So they want to know right away you're applying. Employers often get, when they get tons of applications, they get a lot of stuff where applicants are applying to everything that's on the internet, hoping, something sticks. So among those are many applications that aren't really clear that they are a fit to that company. And so when they don't right away see that it's a fit, they're going to pass. And so this is something just to think about when you're putting together an application, is how can, in that first few seconds, can you make it clear to them that your application is a good match to that opportunity. So the first step of this is having a tailored resume. That means that you want your resume to have evidence that you have the experience they're looking for. So if they're asking for 2 years experience in a customer service environment, that means that you want to make sure you have your retail job, your cafe job, something like that on there, because that's a customer service environment, and making sure the dates are accurate. So you have that 2 years clear. So you're giving evidence of what they're asking for. And then you also want to make sure that the skills and experience is clear on your resume, and maybe it's more at the top so that they don't have to read the whole page, see the relevant stuff. It's right up front. So you're thinking about how can you make it easily seen by someone who's reading quickly. The other thing to be aware of is, especially if you're applying for an internship or an entry-level job, your experience does not have to be art and design related, because most of those jobs are their entry level, their internships, their educational experiences. So they're often the first step kind of towards your career path. So being able to kind of connect non-art jobs that you've had or experience you've had to their art job is going to be really helpful, but you want to make that clear to the employer that you're making a connection and you have some evidence that you are qualified for what they're looking for. So here's an example. A job description asks for the ability to work as part of a team. And something to note is working as part of a team. That could be a job at Starbucks. That could be a job at a graphic design or animation studio. So it doesn't necessarily matter if your experience is specifically art or design related. You just want to think about what they're asking for and give evidence. So you want to think of any experience you have where you worked with others. It could be a job, it could be an activity at MassArt, a class project, an internship, and then you're going to describe that and kind of give evidence that you have worked as part of a team. So that's kind of what you want to think about in terms of tailoring your resume towards what they're asking for. So you want, like I said, you don't want to just send off your resume and hope they kind of see some potential in you. You want to connect the dots for them, because if you're just listing everything you've ever done in chronological order, it kind of looks like this, but you want to connect everything so it's really obvious kind of who you are, what your experience is. So that's kind of the next step of tailoring your resume. So now we'll go a little bit more into what employers are looking for. So like I said, your experience, it might be art and design related, it might not. That's totally okay. But the important thing to know is that there are certain attributes that all employers, no matter the industry, that they're looking for. So you can always cater your resume for these key attributes. These are 12 key attributes and that all employers are looking for. And this is from a survey done by the National Association of College Employers, which MassArt is a part of, where they asked employers for the top 10 skills or top skills they're looking for. So they answered with problem solving, analytical quantitative skills, ability to work in a team, written communication, initiative, strong work ethic, technical skills, flexibility, adaptability, detail-oriented leadership, verbal communication, and interpersonal skills. So when you look at a job description, you will see they'll sometimes have the technical skills like Photoshop, Toon Boom, something like that, but they will always have a mix of these attributes, people skills, problem solving, ability to work in a team, collaboration. So every job you look at, whether it's in art or not, is going to ask for some combination of this. And if you have some work experience, volunteer experience, or even activities, you probably have some combination of experience using these key attributes that you can kind of put on your resume and kind of give employers evidence that you are qualified. So no matter what industry you're in, this is what you want to kind of write your resume to and what you want to demonstrate when you apply for positions. So when you look at a job description or an internship description and it's written well, that also is going to be a summary of exactly what the employer is looking for and what their priorities are and how they're going to evaluate applicants. So if they say must have 2 years work experience and you have 1 year work experience, that's, might be something where they're kind of, just looking at the duration of experience that you have. But just look for the job description because that's going to guide you with what they want. There will be some flexibility also, and I'll kind of go into that a little bit. You also want to understand when you read a job description, do your best to understand what the job description is and what the company does, and that's also going to help you make a strong application. So here's an example. When you look at the company, you want to look for context for the position and the company. When you look at the description, they will often talk about minimum qualifications or required qualifications. So those are usually the where they're not flexible. So if they say, must be a current student, that's a required qualification, and they're probably not flexible on that. But if they say preferred qualification, we prefer the candidate know some Illustrator, that's something where they're going to be a little bit flexible on. So look for those words of required or preferred in the job description, because you're not necessarily going to match everything they look for, but you want to match the minimum that they look for, the required qualifications, and that everything else is areas to kind of negotiate or for you to learn. So be aware of that. They also will ask for hard skills and soft skills. So hard skills are going to be, Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, technology, things like that, things that are kind of teachable, measurable. Soft skills are things like people skills, collaboration, things that you can give evidence of, but it's not always something that can be taught. It's just kind of an attribute. And you want to research the company for more information, because more information will give you context on what the job description, how it fits in. And then going through their job description and just match up the experience that you have, and then match up what you don't have. And it's okay to not have everything. Generally, when you apply for a position, you're not going to match everything. They're describing an ideal candidate, but by the nature of being ideal, it's not necessarily realistic. So they're going to, they're trying for the best fit they can get. But most employers, especially for an internship or entry-level job, know that they're going to have a learning curve and are prepared to kind of teach skills that you may not necessarily have yet. So that's totally okay. So, like I said, look for the terms required minimum qualifications. These are the essential qualifications that they have to have. So examples: must be a recent graduate, or must be a current student, must have a specific field of study, or must have some customer service experience. These are the types of things you might see in a description. And then the preferred or desired qualifications, if you don't have these, they'll still be considered, but it might be something that kind of puts you ahead of another candidate, but you can still apply if you don't have the preferred qualifications. And often this might be some technical or computer skills, because they can teach you those. So that's often the sorts of areas where they're flexible. And then, like I said, soft skills, these are personality traits, usually how you interact with other people. So ability to communicate, work as part of a team, adapt to changing situations, things like that. And often the soft skills are, the ones that they're really looking for, because that's a little harder to teach than the hard skills. And so that's also really good to kind of address on your resume. And it doesn't matter what your work experience is, or even if volunteer experience, you can usually give evidence of some soft skills from your background. And then hard skills, those tend to be more teachable skills, like computer skills, things like that. So you want to, as you kind of move towards applying, you want to make sure you understand the job and the context of what the company does, and then go through the job description and match up your skills to articulate why you're interested, and then also be aware of what you're missing, because that's helpful to know as well, because that might be something that they, ask a question later. If you have an interview, they might just ask, to see if you have an understanding of the position and what learning you might need on the job. And then you just want to give evidence of what experience and skills you have that matches what they're looking for. So here's a job description: children's programming intern at GBH. They've posted this several times. So you'll see an overview of the department, an overview of the job. So they're giving the context of how where this intern will work within a larger company, GBH. They give an overview of the job, and then they put the responsibilities. So that's like what the intern will be doing day to day. And so that can be helpful to kind of give you a sense of, what will actually be done in this internship and what you might need to know in order to do the internship, or you might learn in the internship. And then they list a skill set. And you'll kind of see a lot of these are soft skills: must be proactive, professional, and able to multitask, comfortable working independently as well as with a team, organizational skills and keen attention to detail, So those are all the soft skills and those key attributes all employers are looking for. So if you have your resume where you're kind of listing your kind of experience working as part of a team, organizational skills, things like that, that right away, like they're going to see that on your resume. So you can, kind of know that you're addressing that. And then they also say must be proficient with Max, experience writing with writing, television, video production, or working with children is preferred. So they're saying preferred, so that's a preferred qualification. So it might be something where, they're not necessarily looking for all that experience, they're just looking for some exposure to that. So you could address that with like a class you've taken, with an internship you did, with some volunteer work. So that's kind of what you want to look for, is that preferred. And that might be something you want to kind of call attention to, because maybe you want to kind of make sure that they don't miss that you have a lot of a lot of related experience. And then they also say design photo editing skills is a plus. A plus is another way of saying preferred. So those are the things that might set a candidate apart from the others. So that's kind of what you want to pay attention to when you read a description, because that's something you might want to address in your application. So this is a good exercise when I say matching up your skills. A great way to do this is just do this exercise where you put elements from the job description on the left column and then your experience on the right column. So writing experience, they're asking for that. Maybe you have some experience working on film projects where you wrote stuff. Maybe you worked on some TV and video projects or animation. So you can kind of connect that. They mentioned social media content as one of the responsibilities. You can maybe mention, like, if you had social media experience, you can kind of connect it there. So you're kind of going side by side, like connecting each of your skills. So experience working with children, if you had kind of nanny experience, after school art program, that might be something where it's not necessarily film video related or animation related, but it's working with children, and that kind of, is what they asked for. So, it's really just kind of combing through your experience and finding those areas that you might be able to give as evidence that you have the qualifications they're looking for. So the next step is, after you kind of match up your skills and you read through job description, is how to actually put this into practice. So just starting with a resume, every place you apply is going to ask for a resume. So you want to make sure you work on that first. Generally, when you apply, your resume isn't going to change to each place you apply. You might have an animation resume or a retail resume, so it's going to be more like industries. But generally, you want to kind of keep the resume relatively consistent, and just maybe vary depending on if you're applying on different types of industries or jobs. So the basic information to have on your resume is your contact information, name, MassArt email if you're applying for an internship, because often employers look for current students, so that's good to just put that email there, your phone number. You also want to make sure you have your education, because if you're applying for an internship, employers often want a current student, so you want to make sure that's clear. So include MassArt. Make sure also, if you're including MassArt, you're including your degree, your expected graduation date, your major, just so they know if you're like certificate student, BFA student, grad student, just so they know what degree you're in. If you've had previous college, like if you transferred or went to a community college, include that as well. You could also include high school, but at a certain point, it might make sense to take high school off. And often, if you're getting awards and honors while in school, sometimes that kind of is connected to education. Then you'll have a section, usually after education, where you put experiences. And experiences, it could be work experience, could be internships, but it could also be projects, activities, student leadership, things like that. It's just experiences that you've had that might be relevant to the place you're applying for. And then it's also good to have a relevant skill section where you include software, technology you're familiar with, maybe even languages. So going back to your experience. So like I said, experience is not necessarily just jobs. It can be jobs, activities, sports, volunteer, projects. any place where you might have used skills they're looking for, where you can kind of give evidence that you have some qualifications they're looking for. So it's helpful to give descriptions of what you did, how you did it, show your soft skills, your teamwork, your communication, things like that. And experience doesn't have to be art related. This is where you kind of show those kind of universal attributes that all employers are looking for. And you're going to get that in any industry. It's not necessarily just art and design. So again, those key attributes that employers are always looking for: problem solving, analytical, quantitative skills, ability to work in a team, and all of this. This is what you want to make sure to highlight. Not necessarily all of them, but the ones that you have so far that you feel like you can showcase in some kind of context, that's a place or a project you've worked on. So here's an example. So this is a shift manager position at a cafe. It's totally not art related. And you'll see I've highlighted some of those soft skills, those attributes employers are looking for. Manages a team in a busy cafe. That's leadership. Communicates expectations to the team and supports them. That's communication. It's also a little bit of teamwork because it's also giving support to the team. And then assist customers with issues to ensure satisfaction. So that's customer service, that's interpersonal skills, and it's also problem solving. So that's a way to kind of show that you have those. And then even though, if say this person is applying to an animation internship, they probably wouldn't have a cash drawer at the internship, but showing that, like you open and close a cafe and reconcile the cash drawer, that's responsibility and also attention to detail. So it's kind of showing that you can kind of, pay attention to those little details and be entrusted with those things. So this is how you would describe a non-related art job, or any job. It could be art related too, but you want to kind of include those soft skills, because then it gives employers some evidence that you have this ability to work with other people, to communicate and have responsibility and leadership. So this is kind of like how you would put that on your resume. So typically when you are applying for a job or internship, employers will always ask for a resume. So that's just kind of like the baseline of what is expected. Sometimes they'll ask for a cover letter or portfolio. This depends on the job itself. So if the job is doing design, doing illustration, doing animation, they will likely ask for a cover letter, portfolio, samples of your work in some form. And this is something that you can also include as part of your contact information on your resume. When you apply, you want to follow the application instructions as closely as possible. So if they say send a resume and send a PDF with some work samples of your work, you want to do that. If they say send a resume and a link to your portfolio, you do it that way. So you want to kind of be as deep, attention to detail as possible. And also you can demonstrate some of the skills you're looking for in your application, mainly following instructions. Sometimes you'll see things like, send an email application, make sure the subject says, animation internship applicant, something like that. You want to follow that, because sometimes they will, if you're not following instructions, it means like that email, your application might get lost. It might not go to the right person. So some of those little details can be really helpful to just kind of getting through to the right person to have your resume reviewed. The only exception to following instructions is I would suggest that you always include a cover letter, even if they don't ask for it, because it's an important tool that kind of introduces who you are. When you just send a resume and don't send a cover letter, it's kind of like walking up to a total stranger on a street and just handing them a resume and walking away without a word. They're going to be like, what the hell? What is this? Why did this person give me their resume? So the cover letter is really that personal touch that kind of introduces you to the total stranger on the internet. It's going to explain what you're applying for, how you found out about it, what you're kind of sending to them, and then why you're interested in that position. So it's important to include that, just because, it will help get your resume to the right person. It also kind of puts a personal touch on it, and knowing that most employers want to work with a professional person who can communicate, it also kind of gives a demonstration of that skill set. So yeah, you should always send a cover letter. So what is a cover letter? So the first thing is like cover letter is a little bit of an old-fashioned term in itself. Back before the internet, when people applied for jobs that were listed in the newspaper, they would print out their resume or type up the resume and have a letter that went over the resume, and they'd fold it and put it in an envelope and put it in the mail. So that's how the term started. But generally, kind of nowadays that we have the internet, you're probably very often going to be applying by email or maybe through an online web portal. Generally, if you're doing by email, it might be email of interest or letter of interest. It's basically the message that kind of goes with your resume to introduce it. You want to treat it like a professional letter as much as possible. So in an email, make sure you have a signature, like your name, your contact information in it. If you're doing a PDF letter, you want to format it like a professional letter. You can kind of have the design of your cover letter document match your resume if you want. Just thinking as a visual artist, it's a nice touch. But very often it's going to be a cover letter is going to be the message that you put in your email and have your resume attached to that email. You're not going to leave that email blank. You want to have something in there. What the email or what the cover letter will say, it's going to introduce you. That says what you're applying for, and that's just like a practical thing so that they know kind of how to kind of process your application, which department to send it to. So that's really helpful to include is what position you're applying for. Sometimes it's helpful to say how you found out about it, because you can mention like if a faculty member referred you, if a friend referred you, if you found it on a certain website, that can be helpful. You want to explain why you're interested in the position and connect your skills to their job description. So this is where that matching up your skills and experience can be really helpful, because that basically is a draft that will help you write your cover letter. So you can say, yes, I have experience in film and video. I'm an animation student, but I've also worked on film projects. Here's some examples. So you can kind of be very directly address their job description. And it's good to customize it, the cover letter, because then it shows that you read their job description, you're being thoughtful, you're investing some time into reading about their company and kind of addressing kind of their requests. It's also a place where you can add any additional information. So say there's some things you want them to see that maybe is not clear on your resume, you can highlight that on your cover letter. You can also give a direct link to samples of your work that might be really relevant to them in particular. So it's a good way to kind of call attention to something more specifically than would be on your resume. And also including a cover letter, it shows your communication skills and professionalism. And so that's often, they look for the hard skills, but they often are looking for a good person to work with. So a cover letter is a good way to kind of show that. So here's just an overview format. Like a cover letter would only maybe be a half page, 3 to 4 paragraphs. And you're going to write it in your own voice. So usually dear first name, last name, or dear hiring manager. I would avoid dear Mr. or Mrs. just because that's gender and you don't necessarily always know who you're addressing. And then do an introduction paragraph, what you're applying for, how you found out about it. And that's the first paragraph. And then the second paragraph is really introducing your background, your experience, and what background you have that's relevant to their position. And making that connection. So that's really kind of the big paragraph where you're really kind of showing them what you want them to know about you. And then the closing paragraph, this is just thanking them for their time and inviting them to contact you for an interview. So these are just very short messages, but they kind of pack a punch. So it's good to kind of be thoughtful and take a little moment to do a cover letter. So that's a lot of information, but hopefully it's helpful. Just like a quick recap. So when you're applying for an internship or job, you want to make sure you understand the job and the company and what they're looking for, and think about how your skill set matches up. And you want to make your case by tailoring your resume and introducing yourself with a customized cover letter for that position. And then make it clear so the employer understands right away why you are applying. Okay, so now I will end the slides and I'm happy to answer any questions. So I know Naomi, you had a question about the slides. Will it be available? Yes, we can make them available after the session. Any other questions?
Hi, I have a question.
Sure.
Thank you for the presentation, first of all. I was wondering, so I attended another college and I saw that you can write like, you said we can write like other college on there, but if I didn't get a degree from there, I just took like a bunch of classes, like liberal arts classes and stuff. How would you suggest I include it? Should I just write the years that I attended, or
Yeah.
Education.
Did you transfer, or did you take like continuing ed or pre-college classes?
It was kind of like a continuing ed, I guess.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I got my degree from MassArt, but
Mhm.
I ended up just taking, I wasn't really going for a degree. I just wanted
Okay.
to like learn some extra stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, I didn't know how I should include that.
So I mean, there's two ways you could do it. So you don't want to necessarily have an employer think you were going for a degree if you were not. You could do additional education and put like the college and just do like so classes included and kind of highlight the classes, especially if they're relevant to what you're applying for. That might be a way to do it, or you can just put like the duration of the years. That might be something where in your specific case, having an appointment with us for a resume critique, we can kind of look at kind of what that experience was and kind of customize it kind of more specifically. Because it's hard to really say like without kind of knowing how many classes, what the nature of the classes are. But there could be different ways, and it might just depend like if you want to call attention to what the classes were, maybe they're relevant, or you just kind of want to highlight that you took some classes during a certain period. But that's kind of the I guess the initial thinking I have. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, that is helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Oh, so Naomi asked if the GBH internship is still available. I don't know offhand if this one is still available. I would Handshake might, if it's not on Handshake, it may not be available right now, but I know they have offered it multiple semesters. So if it's not up right now, it might come back for an upcoming semester as well. Any other questions? You can put them in the chat or unmute yourself or.
I have a question.
Sure.
I was curious to know your thoughts on a quick apply. Websites such as LinkedIn and Monster have this function called quick apply, where like you don't necessarily type out a cover letter and everything. You basically just have a resume on file that you upload and send out. I was curious, do you still recommend custom tailoring each resume to those jobs, or to just essentially upload the same resume to those jobs, since that's what they kind of seem to be looking for? I was curious to know what your thoughts on quick apply are.
Yeah, I haven't used it myself, so I don't necessarily know how it works, and if it's sending a LinkedIn profile, if it's sending a PDF resume. I would say that at least for the resume component, you don't need to tailor your resume to every job. It's more tailored towards industry. And I don't think most of you probably won't be applying to like a lot of industries. You'd probably be applying to, maybe one or two at the most. So you want to kind of keep the resume relatively consistent, but I think I always wonder with the quick apply if how the resume looks on the other end, and if the employer can pick up the information. So that means making the resume as much as you can kind of match the sorts of jobs you're applying for. I don't know. It's hard to really say. I know that some employers also have said they don't ask for cover letters. I still think that it can be helpful, because sometimes looking at a resume, you want to make it clear that why you're qualified, and sometimes it's hard to do that with the resume format, and a cover letter really kind of connects the dots in a kind of another way. So I don't know. I think I kind of question question how it looks on the other end, and it kind of makes the resume even more important to kind of connect to those roles if you're doing quick apply. Does that help at all?
A little bit. I would say that like usually with quick apply, it's like I upload a PDF of my resume. At least that's what LinkedIn wants. And
Okay.
then Monster, for example, is pretty much the same too.
Okay.
Usually within quick apply there are different things. So there's like some quick apply applications ask for like just resume and that's it, but some others ask for resume plus answering a few questions
Mhm.
for yourself and your experience and whatnot, and then send it out. So it's sometimes jobs ask for different things depending on exactly what they are. But mostly it's just a PDF of the resume.
Yeah. So I would think with that, a PDF of the resume, and make sure that resume is as much as you can tailored to the industry. So you could have, so like for a LinkedIn profile, you might have a very long LinkedIn profile that includes everything, but for a PDF of a resume, you might kind of be much more selective and focus it kind of more towards a specific industry. So I think if you're doing the PDF, I definitely take advantage of that versus sending just a complete like master resume or LinkedIn profile. And then if they are asking questions, that's sort of like in place of a cover letter. So I would kind of treat those questions a little bit like a cover letter and think about how you can really connect the dots between your resume and what they're looking for. So it may not be like a formal letter that you're sending them. It might be how you address those questions and kind of using those to your, your best ability to kind of connect your resume to what they're looking for. Does that help a little bit more?
I would say so, yes. And I would just like to follow up on in terms of resumes, because for example, I'm a graphic designer. I have graduated in the communication design program, and
Yeah.
graphic design is a bit unique in that it's certainly the core field of graphic design, but there's a big range of duties and tasks that is expected of graphic design jobs, especially entry-level graphic design jobs. For example, one graphic design job can be graphic design, but also marketing, and one job can be graphic design, but also like a side of video. And some places want like a little bit of web design, web coding, and some want like a little bit of animation. So I was wondering, in terms of although it is all graphic design, if you would recommend changing the resume. For example, one resume can be graphic design and video, or one resume can be graphic design plus marketing, rather than one resume that has like everything on it.
Yeah, I would kind of imagine that can be helpful to kind of cater those for the graphic design and the sort of supporting skills. And it might just depend on kind of what skills you have, and if it warrants a kind of a focused resume on like video or social media plus graphic design. Yeah, so that can be something to kind of consider, is to kind of cater towards that. I know that graphic design has become a very multiple hat area these days.
Absolutely. And I just had a question in follow-up to in terms of follow-up to cover letters and resumes, if we have the time.
Sure.
Yeah, so especially in terms of cover letters, you mentioned like everything from the layout to like introduction to your experience and everything. I was wondering how much time you recommend putting into the cover letter and everything, especially when I write cover letters. I like to go to the website, go to the About Us section. Like a lot of times companies will have like a web page about like their values and such, so I can kind of introduce myself and incorporate their kind of values, and I can find keywords in order to incorporate that into my resume and but primarily into my cover letter. But of course, that can be a very time consuming, and oftentimes I only write like a few cover letters per day if I'm working on like all day, for example. And I think it's kind of exhausting too. So I was wondering if you recommend like spending a lot of time kind of trying to perfect the cover letter, kind of just not worry about spending a whole lot of time into it and just kind of getting something out and not worry about it like being perfect all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think to do, especially like say there's a company that you really are like very interested in applying for, and you want to do the best application possible. I think doing a very customized and thoughtful cover letter and doing your research can be helpful, and it does take time. I think that it's better to do quality over quantity, but maybe it's something where you kind of prioritize. So the companies you're very interested in, you spend more time on, but maybe there's some where you do like a customized cover letter, but you don't necessarily, you kind of keep it a little more casual, but I think it's still good to kind of be customized in some way and decide how much time you want to spend on it and how much how invested you are in that company, and kind of prioritize it. And everyone is a little bit different with how they do research, how they kind of put together a cover letter. But the other thing to think about is that it's not just research for the cover letter, it also is research for, like, if you were to get the interview, if you were, even just deciding how to apply. So it kind of hopefully will all kind of pay off. But it is definitely harder, but I think it will get more of a response than if you are just kind of doing a generic cover letter, because that employers can spot a mile away. So I think it's just kind of balancing your time, what you want to get out of it, and how much you are interested in each company. So yeah, so there's no necessarily like right or wrong answer. It's just kind of, what you think is what you want to kind of do to get the job, I guess.
Okay, thank you. And I think there's another question in the chat as well.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. So Ariel says, can I ask about students lacking experience outside their major who never took a job before? How can students be internship applicants if they don't have substantial experience but want to apply anyway? Is it feasible to take a part-time or full-time job as a full-time student with barely any experience unrelated to a major, but fresh out in the open? So I think, so generally, when you're applying for internships are generally your first, for most students, will be your first experience related to your major or your hopeful career path. So most of the time when you're looking for that first internship, employers know that you're not going to have related experience. It does help to have some kind of prior experience to kind of include on your resume. That doesn't necessarily have to be a job, but that could be activities, student leadership. You could highlight a project you did in your major. You could think of, there could be different ways you kind of show some work experience. Sometimes it is helpful to kind of, if you're thinking about doing an internship and you feel like you don't have as much experience, you can look for ways to kind of get some work experience. Most students who I've worked with who have resumes have done like campus jobs, off-campus jobs, usually part-time. It's rare to do full-time as a student. That would be really, really hard to do, and I don't recommend it unless it's necessary. But I mean, you can think about getting some experience, along the way as a student. It doesn't also have to always be jobs. Getting involved on campus, student leadership, there's different ways you can kind of get some experience, but I think, that's, something you can think about, but you may already have that as well. It's just kind of thinking like big picture, like, do you have experience that you can kind of put it on your resume that might give evidence of kind of some of the transferable skills, the soft skills for an employer, like working as part of a team. That could be a class project. So it's kind of, what you feel like you need to get or what you already have. It's figuring out how to put that on a resume. I would also, if you have questions about your experience specifically, we do one-on-one resume critiques. And if you want, I can show you how to make an appointment, but that sometimes if you have questions specifically about your own resume, that's a helpful way to kind of get a fresh perspective on that. I don't know if that answered your question, Erin. Okay. Any other questions?
I have a question in regards to cover letters as well.
I'm sorry, you have a question about what?
Cover letters.
Sure.
Yeah, so I was in an appointment with Mary Ellen earlier. Actually, she really stressed that cover letters should be skimmable, to really kind of keep things to a minimum, keep it short, because you don't want to be too convoluted, too overloaded with information. She really stressed. So I was wondering what the key is to making cover letters stand out. If a cover letter is supposed to be skimmable, it's supposed to be quick, but you also want it to stand out about in front of everyone else. What's the key there? What would you say a good balance is?
I think being short and succinct. So thinking like 3 to 4 paragraphs max and half a page, and just keeping them short paragraphs. So the cover letter, it's not an essay. And maybe you just kind of give yourself like bring up three points in the job that you have kind of a lot of experience connected to, and kind of just address those key few points. So it's just kind of think like short and sweet, and just maybe prioritizing like the top 3 things they're asking for that you can kind of have, you can connect your experience to. So I think that's the best way. If it's getting longer than a half a page, it makes it harder, because most I think employers are probably reading very quickly. So I think that's probably just the key, is kind of keeping it focused on a couple key points. And your goal isn't necessarily to tell your life story or to give all your experience. It's just to get you to the point where you can get an interview, and then you can talk much more and give more information. Yeah, does that help answer your question?
Okay, so yeah, so it sounds like in terms of experience, sounds like the resume is for experience primarily, and then the cover letter is primarily for interest in that
Yeah.
position in specific.
Yeah, the cover letter is going to be mostly about the job and what they're looking for, and then kind of saying what experience you have. But obviously, resume will have a little more info, and then you can give even more info in an interview. So it's really just kind of calling attention to like some key points that you want them to pay attention to.
Good, thank you.
So I know there is another question, I think.
I'll probably end up making like a individual appointment. But it was kind of similar to like Ariel's question. The only difference for me is I didn't graduate recently enough to apply for like internships and stuff. So I guess I was like seeking advice on like how to find the entry-level jobs, because a lot of the entry-level jobs that I've applied to, I've still been getting rejected because I have work experience that's unrelated.
Okay.
Art and design, but I'm trying to
You're trying to change directions.
Yeah.
So what I would recommend is making an appointment, and your appointment will probably be with Marriott Ellen. She is very good at like doing sort of in-depth kind of what your past work experience is, what you want your future experience to be, and how to kind of strategize either through the resume or your process, how to go after that. And there are like a whole other kind of ways you can kind of adjust your resume to kind of make that more clear to an employer and kind of connect some dots. So I would definitely recommend making an appointment, because I know she can help a lot with that.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'll probably do. Thank you.
Okay, and for everyone here, whether you're a student or an alum, career development can help you with your individual situation, so you don't kind of lose access to us. So if you have questions about your specific application process, what you're looking to do, I always recommend making an appointment, because we do look at a lot of resumes and can kind of help give you kind of objective, actionable like advice on like what you can do to kind of get to where you're going. So take advantage of us. Any other questions? Okay, cool. So I guess if we have no other questions, I'll leave it at that. I'm going to put my email in the chat in case you need to reach, anyone wants to reach me kind of outside of this presentation. And I'm also going to add our website as well. So any other kind of questions you have, we have kind of resources there. Give me one sec. Okay, cool. Well, anyway, I'll leave it there. If you have any questions, reach out to me after the session. Otherwise, thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.